She showed me the game on a video call. She shared her screen, clicked play, and I watched. Emojis appeared: a banana, carrot, a tomato, a bottle that was supposed to be mustard but didn't quite look like mustard. A 60-second timer started running. She was smiling the way teachers smile when they've done something they didn't know they could do. She had never written a line of code in her life, and I want to ask you something before we go any further. When was the last time you made something for your students? Not sourced it, not adapted it, but genuinely made it from nothing. Because what existed just wasn't enough. And when was the last time a student looked at that thing and told you exactly what was wrong with it? Because that second part is what this episode is really about. Pedagogical Episode 7. Welcome to Pedagogical for English Teachers. I'm Marcelo Hosannah, EFL teacher, instructional coach, and someone who spends a lot of time thinking about the gap between what we intend for our students and what actually happens in the room. Today I want to talk about vibe coding. It's a term in the software world that I think has something genuinely useful to say to language teachers. But I want to approach it from an angle that you might not expect. The question I'm interested in is not how do teachers use AI to make resources. The question is, what does the process of making your own resources reveal about what you actually know? And what does it reveal about what only you can know? About your students, your classroom, your specific moment in the curriculum. Because I think that's where the real conversation is. I was running a coaching cycle with a teacher, and it's a story that belongs to her, but the tension belongs to a lot of people. She came into the program with a specific problem. A class that was too small. There were 2 students, sometimes 3 when the third decided to show up. The book was there, the activities were there, but the energy that a group is supposed to generate, the friction that makes learning happen between people simply just wasn't there. The class was too small. It was just her and them. And when she asked them to do a paired dialogue, they already knew each other too well to pretend that it was anything new in it. She tried what experienced teachers try. There were physical games and movements and storytelling, drama, and it worked up to a point. The lessons got more alive, but she said something to me in one of our sessions that I kept coming back to. She said, "I feel like a battery that needs to be recharged from 0 every single week." And that struck me. It's not as a complaint, but as a diagnostic. She wasn't running out of skills, she was running out of structure. The class didn't have enough critical mass to sustain its own momentum. She was generating all of it alone every time. And then she had an idea that she herself thought was a bit absurd. She asked me almost in passing, "Remember that professional development session you gave in January?" I said, "Yeah, sure." She was referring to a professional development session on vibe coding that I gave in January. And she remembered that and thought to herself, it's a bit absurd, but an actual digital game that runs on the school's tablet wouldn't be such a bad idea. I said, "Why not?" And she said, "Because I don't know how to code." And I said, "You don't have to." So what happened over the next few weeks was, for me, one of the most interesting things I've witnessed inside a coaching relationship. She opened a generative AI tool, described what she wanted: a timer, scoring system, images that shuffle between rounds so students can't memorize positions, food vocabulary tied to the unit they were studying, and she started iterating. When the code didn't work, she described the problem. When it worked but felt wrong, she adjusted, not line by line. She didn't understand code. I don't understand code. But throughout the conversation, throughout the shape of what she wanted to see happen, this game started taking shape. The first game was called Food Links. It's Wordle inspired, 60 seconds, 5 rounds, points for correct answers, small penalty for errors, and it ran directly in the browser. No installation, no app, nothing to download. And she used it in the next lesson. And then something happened that I didn't anticipate. One of the students played for 2 minutes, looked at the screen, and said, "Teacher, that emoji mustard doesn't look like mustard." She made a note, fixed it, came back the following week with the updated version, and that student, who had previously only engaged when required to, arrived at the next lesson with something I can only describe as anticipation. Not to do the book exercises, but to see what had changed in the game since last time. Now, that's a different kind of relationship with content, and it arrived by a route I wouldn't have predicted at the start of that cycle. When I tell the story, the first question people ask is, how do I do that? How do I do that? And I understand the impulse, but I think that the question arrives too early, because before we get to know the how, it's worth understanding exactly what happened. Because what happened goes well beyond a teacher learning to use AI. The more interesting question is not how did she build the game, it's what did she know that the AI didn't? So let's go over this in a few steps, in a couple of layers. The first layer is the obvious one. It's where most conversations about AI and education stop. The AI generated the code. The teacher didn't code. She couldn't code. So the AI did something that she couldn't do. End of story, apparently. But it isn't, because code by itself has no pedagogical value. A vocabulary game with a 60-second timer and 5 rounds is a pedagogical decision. The fact that the items shuffle between rounds is a pedagogical decision. She didn't want students memorizing positions. She wanted them practicing active retrieval. The fact that there's a scoring system with both positive points and a small penalty is a pedagogical decision. She wanted enough pressure to maintain focus without enough stakes to kill motivation. The AI executed, but every one of those decisions was hers. The idea that expert teaching isn't just subject knowledge or generic instructional skill, but the transformation of content into learnable experience. What vibe coding does is externalize that transformation in a new way. When you describe to an AI what you want students to experience, you are making your pedagogical reasoning visible to yourself, to the system you're working with, and that's a clarifying act, whether or not a game comes out of it. The second layer is a little more subtle, and it's the only one I find most important. When a student said that the mustard emoji didn't look like mustard, it wasn't a design critique. It was evidence of engagement. He was inside the experience enough to notice a detail, to care about it, and to offer feedback. Intrinsic motivation suggests that one of the most powerful drivers of sustained engagement is what they call ownership. The sense that something is genuinely yours or made for you. The student wasn't using a resource that some publisher had produced for a generic learner. He was using something his teacher had made for this class, for this unit, for him. And that changes his relationship to the content in ways that even well-designed commercial material can't replicate. And this isn't a new phenomenon. It happened before AI existed. Whenever a teacher made something by hand, cut images from magazines, built a board game out of cardboard, what AI does is reduce the technical cost of getting there. The phenomenon itself is old. The access to it is new. Educational research consistently shows that teacher-student relationship and feedback loops are among the highest impact variables in learning. What the vibe coding dynamic creates almost accidentally is both. The student gives feedback, the teacher responds, the student notices the response. That's not a gamification loop. That's a relationship loop, mediated by a digital object that both parties have some stake in. The third layer is where the real tension lives, because this teacher woke up early to build this game. She stayed up late testing versions. She took the project home over the weekend. And early in any innovation cycle, that's natural. It's the energy of someone discovering what they're capable of. But the enthusiasm is not a renewable resource. The question I ask at the end of every coaching cycle is, what will you do with that moving forward? So if you don't have the energy to innovate, when you have 5 classes and a coordination meeting and a report due on Friday and the lessons that still have to happen, how do you deal with that? That question separates a sustainable practice from an isolated project. Her answer was worth paying attention to. She didn't think about herself in isolation. She thought about the community. She built a website. She gave it a name. This website hosts the games organized by level and chapter, and it's accessible to other teachers at the same school who use the same textbook series. The cost of building is hers once, and the benefit is everyone's indefinitely. Sustained intellectual progress happens not when individuals innovate in isolation, but when communities build on each other's work. What she was designing, almost without naming it, was exactly that kind of infrastructure. And that, I think, is what distinguishes vibe coding as a pedagogical practice from vibe coding as a novelty. I'm not suggesting any of this is easy. Building a game from scratch, even with AI, takes time most teachers don't have. It requires iteration, which is frustrating when the output isn't right. It requires the willingness to put something unfinished in front of students and trust them to engage with it seriously rather than ironically. All of that is real. But what this teacher showed me, without having planned to show me anything, is that AI didn't replace her judgment. It moved the location of her judgment. Before, the teacher had to execute, cut, paste, type, print. Now, she can conceive. And conceiving is different from executing. Conceiving requires that you know what you want, and why you want it, and what you'll do with that result. Those questions don't live in the code, they live in you. So I want to leave you with a question to sit with after this episode ends. If you could build anything for your current students, no technological barrier, knowing the AI would handle the parts that you can't, what would you build? And what does that answer tell you about what you think is missing from the lessons you already have? Because I think the answers to that question is the beginning of a much more interesting conversation than how do teachers use AI in the classroom? It's a conversation about what you actually know about your students and what no one else does. And that knowledge, that specific local relationship knowledge of who is sitting in front of you on a Tuesday morning, is the one thing that doesn't get generated by a prompt. Thanks for listening. If this resonated or if it left you with more questions than it resolved, which is sometimes more useful outcome, I'd love to know what it brings up for you and what it makes you want to revisit in your own planning, what it makes you want to build. Because I think the real work starts when this episode ends and you're standing in front of your group on a Tuesday morning, looking at a lesson plan that doesn't quite fit and deciding what to do about it. Subscribe to Pedagotech for English teachers on Substack at pedagotechenglish.substack.com. The companion article for this episode is right there and free for everyone. See you next time.